And delighted to be joined right now by a Conservative peer now, Lord Mackinlay, as was Craig Mackinlay, a former Conservative MP. Good morning to you once again.
Good morning, Julia. Good to be here.
Lovely to speak to you. Now, I mean, I have to say, my first question to you is, I'm guessing you thought that the Labour government under Keir Starmer would not be very good. It would perhaps even be a pretty rubbish government. Are you surprised by quite how bad they are?
Well, I don't think we've seen the start of the rubbish yet. I'm very fearful. I mean, just as a UK taxpayer, about what will happen on budget day. But yes, I mean, if there was a honeymoon, I think we're still waiting for consummation. I think that's all over already before it's even started. What happened yesterday, I think, was a reality check for Labour. They had a bit of a rebellion amongst their own ranks. I mean, with such a huge majority, to only get it over the line by 120, I think was certainly a shot across the bow of where Labour may split internally over the years ahead. But, I mean, the decision to actually take money away from those who are incapable of actually making up their money in any other way, i.e. they can't go and do a bit of extra overtime. I'm talking about pensioners. To take that money away at a time when energy prices are very uncertain, £149 increase in the energy price cap coming into force very shortly. And if Ed Miliband's net zero madness comes to pass, I think energy bills would go that much higher still.
Well, I mean,
over years to come.
Exactly, and this is the thing. I mean, there was clearly, an awful lot of Labour supporters in the media, the Carol Vordermans, etc., and of course Labour MPs very unhappy with that decision yesterday. 52 Labour MPs abstaining, some with permission, some without, and some of that permission would be, oh yeah, you've suddenly found an official engagement in your constituency, you have to be out. You know how these things work with the whips. Just so you do, you don't want to make a big stand, but you also don't want to be seen to have voted for us. Maybe a marginal constituency where this could come back to bite you is going to look bad. Only one Labour MP, John Trigg, actually voted against the measure. But do you think this is the sort of thing that's just going to come back to haunt this government?
Oh, I think it will. I mean, what it's done to the electors has been quite, I think, seismic. If you're a Labour MP sitting on a very narrow win because of the split of the vote between Conservatives and Reform and all the rest of it that went on, and they know they're sitting there quite lucky to be there, they must now be thinking, heavens, this is going to be a 5-year stint and that's it, I'm out the door. Because, those pensioners who may have given Labour the benefit of the doubt to maybe get rid of us or whatever other reasons that went on, they are going to feel very, very scarred over this. Yeah. And then for the rest of the electors, to think what we saw yesterday with the prisoner release, which I don't know if you want to talk about today. I mean,
100%,
these are not good things.
Well, no, but this is on the same day. But that's the thing. They said the winter fuel allowance coming at the time, announced around the time that they announced a big pay rise for train drivers on 65 grand a year. And it's a very big difference between saying, let's pay junior doctors after all those many years of training, and because we have a shortage of them, and it's difficult to retain, difficult to recruit them, but paying them more. That makes sense economically. But there ain't no shortage of train drivers. You don't have to pay them an extra, what it was ended up being 20-odd% over a few years, when you've actually got plenty of them. But this is the thing. The decision on letting prisoners out, again, this is another thing that the government says is entirely down to your former government, the Tories. It's their fault. They didn't build enough prisons. They had no plans to build enough prisons. This is the crisis that was of their making. Letting people out after serving 40% of their sentence, 1,700 or so freed on one day, was a necessary evil, they say. But the sight of people coming out celebrating, people spraying fizz over them, being met by their mates, one by someone in a Lamborghini, saying, yeah, I'm going to be a lifelong Labour supporter. People saying, I'm going to be homeless. I'll probably be back in within a month. We've now discovered that we're likely to be paying for the hotels for some of these people, so they're not homeless, because that'll be a breach of their conditions, but it's not their fault they can't find somewhere to live at such short notice. I mean, this was, an absolute travesty of justice, was it not?
Oh, it was. I mean, I will put our hands up as Conservative government. We struggled to build the prisons that we know we needed.
Why?
I mean, let's be brutally. Well, one of the reasons given is planning problems.
Who was in charge of the planning system, Craig?
Well, exactly. We bound ourselves up with so many complications under planning law. I know Labour are saying they're going to try and streamline that, and perhaps that is one of the things that I may even be slightly supportive of what they're trying to achieve. But when you're ever trying to do anything infrastructure related in this country, you'll have the archaeological assessment, you'll have the environmental assessment, you'll have the newts assessment, and then now you'll have the net zero assessment and all the rest of it. And little wonder that we can't build bridges, roads, underground, tunnels or anything else, or even seemingly prisons. But let's be brutally frank. The number of prisoners that we currently have, in probably your and my view, Julia, is not enough, because very few burglaries are actually solved. Yep. And if you're a low-value shoplifter, then, well, the world's your oyster. You're never going to get your collar felt. So perhaps what we've got to discuss is the underlying criminality of this country. How did we get to this position where, I saw some figures the other day that the number of robberies in the country in the 1950s was in the mere hundreds. And now it is in the tens and tens of thousands.
We have we do have a lot more people, but we also have a lawlessness.
We do, but how do we lose that? Just that internal discipline is lost, and it's perhaps I'm one of those old Luddites who yearn for the past. I'm old, but not that old. But you can't help but think there is just an underlying lack of discipline, lack of respect going through education and into life as well. And yes, I am sounding very old and frumpy, I know, but that is a world I rather wish we were in. Well, we did have a.
I'm for.
We are where we are.
I'm for Rudy Giuliani, New York style, zero tolerance, everything. Riding your bike on the pavement, littering, urinating in public, graffiti. You come down seriously hard each time, every time on everyone. I think you could nip all this stuff in the bud straight away.
Well, I'll tell you what I do fear is the 1,700 released yesterday, 1,700 again next month. I hope somebody, maybe the media, maybe good selves, will be looking at what is the outcome of these early releases.
Oh,
how many crimes will be committed?
Everyone's looking at this. Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt at all. There'll be more shoplifting, there'll be more burglaries, there'll be more thefts, but there'll also be more assaults. There will also be more serious crime.
Well, I mean, Julia, I was a magistrate for 10 years in North Kent. And I'm sorry to say I had very little confidence in the probation service those days, and that was some years ago. And to think they weren't managing a reasonable volume of releases under the normal sort of churn even then, to think they've now got all of these people to deal with, more than a usual churn with these early releases. I mean, it does fill me with some dread,
absolutely,
frankly, because they will not be able to cope with the management.
I've only got a couple more minutes. I just want to ask you about the Tory leadership contest. We saw Robert Jenrick, who's actually going to be on the show a little bit later. He was the winner the second round. He gained votes, as did Kemi Badenoch. Mel Stride dropped out. We've got James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat seen as sort of the One Nation Tory candidates. They're neck and neck in joint third and fourth place there, effectively. What do you make of the leadership contest so far, and who would you be backing?
I'm not coming out for anybody just now, but no surprise, I suppose, that Mel Stride dropped out. He was always the outsider, very decent man, known him for many years, obviously. Priti Patel, I must say, I was quite surprised that she fell out first, but I suppose you could say the field of those deemed to be right of centre is wider than those deemed to be One Nation. Where's my forecast going? I think it could actually progress to who the top two are at the moment, which is obviously Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. I think it's very likely that they will be the two that go forward to the membership for the final decision. So from that point of view, either of those are great candidates, right of centre, and hopefully we'll be able to bring this party forward. But I hear very little, I'm afraid, of how we might bridge the gap with those Reform voters. Because without the Reform voters, the right will win every election, but it will never win government. And that is the catastrophe that we have to solve. And that's a catastrophe where we will need to speak to Nigel and Richard Tice and say, come on, guys, if we get this wrong, we'll end up with very skinny but strong Labour governments forevermore.
And people completely forget the deal that Nigel Farage did with the Brexit Party in December 2019 that gave Boris Johnson that bigger victory. Would never have had that without that deal. I have to leave it there. Always so good to talk to you. Craig Mackinlay, thank you very much. Lord Mackinlay now, Conservative peer. Appreciate you joining us.